the latest scandal to hit the beleaguered Irish health authorities is a surgeon who took it upon himself to experiment medically on 3 children with scoliosis, implanting medical springs into their backs. He didn't have the authorization to carry out these procedures, and the springs that he inserted into these children's backs were not signed off as being safe. So now this has bubbled up to the surface. It came before the Dáil yesterday, and of course Micheál Martin was wriggling around like the worm that he is, trying to get off the hook and pass responsibility for this to everyone except himself. Mary Lou McDonald didn't let him off so lightly, neither did Paul Murphy. There were some interesting exchanges within the Dáil, and we will look now at what has transpired in and around this case, which is, as one group put it, one advocacy group put it, if there's a failure of governance with children's health in hospitals in Ireland, it doesn't just affect children that have been experimented on in this case, but it affects potentially every child that comes in to get any procedure done, period, if they don't have the correct governance in place, which the HICWA report that was published doesn't seem to suggest that those safeguarding measures are in place. It's a systemic failure within the Irish Health Authority. So let's hear what was said.
Release of HICWA's report, the Taoiseach said the practice of the surgeon was incredible.
It is beyond comprehension that springs that are not permitted were used in surgery.
Mary Lou McDonald didn't accept that just one person had acted wrongly. The report, she said, outlined other failures of CHI to act on concerns.
This is profound dysfunction, a pattern of it within the fabric of this organisation. The chairman of the board has resigned. I am asking you, does the board and the rest of the executive need to follow him?
There are set procedures, quality controls over medical devices that are to go into any patient.
Look at this wretch of a man, just wriggling around like a maggot on a hook. That's what he's doing. He's trying to blame everybody but take his own personal responsibility for what transpired here. He didn't do the operation. He didn't procure the springs. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. That's the bottom line. And at least he should acknowledge that. And you'll hear him as this particular video clip that I've made goes on. You'll hear the personal statement that he made where he's pointing the finger at everybody except himself.
The idea that you would use springs outside of that entire protection framework is beyond belief. And responsibility there, in my view, lies with the individual in the first instance.
Sinn Féin were not the only ones querying CHI's response. One TD who had tabled written Dáil questions after a whistleblower came forward said the practice should have been caught earlier.
There had already been some sort of external review of these operations which had not caught this. And
look at this idiot, Paul Murphy. Look at this idiot. How the hell are you supposed to take him seriously? Standing there with his bloody blue shirt with his jumper on over the top of it.
It should have caught this, as far as I understand, in advance of then the whistleblower speaking out and so on.
And others queried a possible impact on the new National Children's Hospital.
Is CHI now capable of managing both the transition to the new hospital building in spring of next year, while also implementing those very wide-ranging set of recommendations?
There have been calls for statements in the Dáil on the report, but none are scheduled for this week.
No statements on this are scheduled in the Dáil this week. That's just a fingers up. That's a 2-finger salute to the children that have been affected in this, to their families that have been affected, to other children that could be potentially affected. And as was rightly pointed up, where's the confidence? If CHI can't even manage governance in surgeons, how the heck is it going to implement the running of this new massive failure of a project with the new children's hospital that's years behind schedule and billions over budget? Do you have any faith in them? Do you have faith with your children going through those doors? Any parents out there of Irish children? Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's hear what this gomeril has to say now, Micheál Martin.
and the 3 children and the trauma that they have gone through and are going through. It is beyond comprehension that springs that are not permitted were used in surgery. And the consultant concerned did use springs that were not CE marked. And that's the fundamental issue here.
That's the fundamental issue. A rogue surgeon decided to take upon himself to experiment on children with non-approved springs in their spines and following procedures that weren't signed off by an ethics committee, as you'll hear.
And then the terms of either the culture within the hospital that facilitated that, and there are governance and there are procedures, but
culture? The culture within the hospital that permitted that? What, is he trying to suggest that there are places in Ireland where people go to get treatment that the surgeon or the doctor operates outside set guidelines and is literally implanting foreign objects into people's bodies that they have procured themselves just to try out new things without getting the nod from an ethics committee?
Procedures weren't followed, either in terms of procurement, in terms of the use of these springs, or indeed in terms of any ethical considerations. This wasn't put before any ethical research committee. So, for example, if a consultant...
And who is this man to talk about ethics? Who are they to talk about ethics? Either him or Mary Lou McDonald, for that matter. The rank hypocrisy of these people is breathtaking.
Wants to engage in innovation and research in terms of techniques around particular surgeries or difficult surgeries normally would go through an ethics committee within the hospital.
Innovation and research. These were children with spinal problems. These were children, Mehul. They were experimented on. He wasn't just trying out new techniques for the benefits of research. He took it upon himself to experiment with unsafe springs into these kids' backs. How bad is it this going to have to get before people start to see these? Look at this imp of the devil. Look at the face. What's it going to take before the penny drops with the Irish electorate that these people are the pits?
That didn't happen here either. And the Minister of the Day, and it was raised in a parliamentary question here, I think by Deputy Murphy, and an inquiry was established. And that's why we have the Health Information and Quality Authority. I established that myself many years ago to make sure that there was an external independent body to investigate and to ensure quality within our healthcare setting.
Listen to the rat. He's trying to take a win from this for himself. This is called damage limitation. He's saying, I actually set up HICWA years ago. I wanted an independent body to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen. Well, now the independent body that he claims that he founded to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen has now happened on his watch. Imagine that. Talk about going full circle.
Let's be very clear. I understand where the Deputy is going in terms of wanting to sort of say it's ultimately government's fault. I mean,
the way he smirks whenever he knows he's in the wrong. Look at that bake. Like a well-slapped arse.
There's a limit to what anyone in this House can do in terms of how people conduct procedures in operating theatres. And let's call a spade here. And we can be political about these things, but there are fundamental issues here that happened that should not have happened. And there has to be individual responsibility. There has to be accountability in that respect. There has to be management accountability in terms of CHI and the board and so on.
There has to be individual responsibility. He's talking about the surgeon. There has to be management accountability. He's talking about the wider circle. But there cannot be responsibility falling on him under no circumstances. So what he's saying is we need a scapegoat. We need some kind of an inquiry to be acknowledged. We need to say that we're going to make sure that this won't happen again, and I need to keep my position intact. Thank you very much. That's what Mehul's saying. That's the translation.
in terms of why the governance procedures were not followed and why they were essentially bypassed. All of the recommendations.
Why they were bypassed, why they weren't followed. More importantly, where do you fit into this? Mary Lou doesn't miss him and hit the wall in her response.
Certainly shocking and deeply unacceptable, but it's not incredible. This was known, Taoiseach. Parents knew it. Advocacy groups knew it. They raised it again and again and again. Wide-ranging systemic issues around governance and a lack of management. Issues around informed consent, deep ethical concerns were raised again and again, and they were ignored. Families and advocates met a brick wall. This is profound dysfunction, a pattern of it within the fabric of this organisation. That's the truth.
Profound dysfunction within the fabric of this organisation. That's the truth. And it is the truth. It's a shambles. It's a shambles. There's a statement that was made on behalf of the Scoliosis Advocacy Network in Ireland. There's been a gaping hole in the governance and standards across CHI Ireland, and that's Children's Health Ireland, CHI Ireland, and that needs to be investigated. So an unholy mess, as you would expect, this time involving literally medical experimentation committed by a rogue surgeon. And by the way, a statement was made as well trying to defend him, to say, okay, this was wrong. We know this was wrong. We know he shouldn't have done it, or they shouldn't have done it. I'm not sure if it's a male or a female. We know that it was out of order, but their intentions were good. They were well-meaning, okay? They had a good heart. It was a mess. These children are messed up now. They're in pain. They're traumatised. Their families are traumatised. There might be other children like this waiting. We're going to hear more about this possibly, but at least there's 3 that we know of. But the surgeon, he was coming from a good place. Come on, give the guy a break. That's effectively the spin that's been trying to put on this. Plus, of course, what you heard Martin say, we need individual accountability, we need management accountability, we need accountability through the CHI. But you know, don't blame this on me. Don't blame this on the government. I set HICWA up in the first place. Come on, give me a break. That's what he's trying to say. What a rat. Absolute rat this me-hole Martin is. So let me know what you think below. Is this a storm in a teacup, or is this the tip of the iceberg? I'm Rick Munn, No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.